I mean, to give them credit, they were some impressive hats. The big stature on those hats. Really tall hats. Hello, welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I like and consume, things like Doctor Who, the MCU, and Star Trek. And we are continuing the weekly reviews of Star Trek Lower Decks here on the channel. We're up to episode 6, which is called The Spy Humongous. We get the Pakleds back in this episode. I feel the Pakleds are really becoming sort of the main bad guy for Lower Decks, and that suits it perfectly because of the very nature of the show, the Lower Decks nature of the show, the comedy nature of the show. The Pakleds feature just fits so well as their main villain. So it's good to see them back again. You know, TNG had the Borg, DS9 had the Cardassians, Voyager, I guess, had the Borg again. The Kazon initially, but they didn't really work out as the main villains, did they? Let's say the Borg were the main villains of Voyager. And Lower Decks has the Pakled. It just fits. I thought this was a really strong episode. It had a nice mix of things that were there for pure, just ridiculous comedy, mainly the Pakled stuff. Then you had some stuff that was good with the whole Tendi and Rutherford and Mariner plot. That was kind of, there was some great comedy bits in there as well, but there was also a kind of exploring their dynamic. And then you had some great character growth from Boimler, and his plotline was a really good one it had a really strong message to it, I think, in a way we don't always see with Lower Decks. We do often, but not always, and I think it's had possibly like one of the strongest messages this season about, you know, about being yourself and not putting on a show for other people. That was really good. We'll get into all of that. But overall, I just think this was a really strong episode, a really good one for the season. And it mixed up the character dynamics again, because you had Boimler going off by himself, and then you had the 3 other main cast sort of working together again. And again, you had a little side plot with the bridge crew as well. So a nice mix-up of the dynamic again. We start the episode with the bridge crew finding out that they're on a diplomatic mission to secure a peace treaty with the Pakleds because they have been attacking trade routes. And this whole plotline is just one sort of farce after another that works so well. Initially, they beam down to the planet, and there's this whole recurring joke about the person they're talking to not being a higher rank enough, but that's in the Pakled world. That is basically based on how tall your hat is. If you've got a bigger hat, you're more in charge. And so we get progressively bigger hats. And it gets to a silly point eventually where you get like, they're introduced to the Queen, but then the Queen says she doesn't have a big enough hat. Then the King comes in, but then immediately the Emperor comes in, and then immediately there's a revolution, and somebody else bursts in, and they will no longer take any shit from the people with big hats until the leader of the revolution picks up the big hat and puts it on, which I think is a perfect analogy for so many revolutions over history, where the people that revolt, that might have a lot of popular support behind them, the leaders of it often end up basically just replacing the people that they got rid of, and sometimes just as bad. I also really liked the fact that following on from last time we saw the Pakleds at the end of the first season, well, it wasn't the last time we saw them, but the last time they were a big feature of the series, they kept on calling the Cerritos the Enterprise, because that's the Starfleet ship they've all heard of. So to them, all Starfleet ships are the Enterprise. And here, and they can't quite comprehend that it's not the Enterprise. Well, here, they mistake the captain for Janeway, presumably because they've heard of Janeway. You know, famous captain, brought her ship back from the Delta Squadron, they might have heard of her, and therefore they just assume this is Janeway, and that sticks for quite a while, right until the very end. They just keep on calling her Janeway, and she keeps on correcting them, and they're just having none of it. In their minds, she's if a female captain's going to come to them, it's going to be Janeway. What happens very quickly on the planet, though, is that they find out that apparently there's an escapee Pakled from Pakled custody that has escaped and gone up and has requested asylum on the Cerritos. But he's not really a refugee. I did wonder at this point whether or not they were going to do some kind of storyline about refugees, but it turns out he's just a spy. And a very bad one at that. He's immediately, after requesting refugee status, asking to see the warp cores and their specs and their codes and things, thinking he's being really undercover and ransom. And the new head of security is there. So is he still the head of security? It's still unclear if him and Shax are in a job share. What's going on there? I don't know. But he's there. And they're like basically humouring this guy and taking him around all of the completely non-classified bits of the ships and pretending they're top secret, just so that he thinks they can go down. And then they lose him, and then there's a panic when they lose him. But that's all lovely stuff, mainly there for the comedy. There's no really deeper meaning to any of that stuff, I don't think. But well, maybe apart from the revolution aspect that comes towards the end. That little commentary there, but other than that, it's mostly there for the sort of silly humour that works really well. The lower decks people, though, aren't really involved. Well, they're not involved with that plot at all. What they're involved with is being assigned to clear up all of the artifacts and rubbish that the higher ranked people keep around and in their quarters. Stuff that's probably quite dangerous that they shouldn't just be keeping around. Seems like once a year the lower decks get sent around to clear all this stuff up, and they go off to do that, but Boimler splits off from them fairly quickly to join this other little group of people, which we'll talk about in a moment. But going back to the three that are left, Rutherford, Tendi and Mariner. Mariner's not happy about this. She's deems it a horrible task, and you can see why, because again there's lots of nice little comedy moments in this where silly things happen because of the artifacts. Like Rutherford his body gets sort of morphed and his DNA changed by one artifact. Tendi releases this weird blob jelly-like creature which just screams. I love that. The fact that she releases it stares at her and then screams. And it's like really high-pitched scream, then runs away. But then it eats her, and then it poos her out. Lovely. But that was really funny. Finally, she gets turned into, with this cube, a scorpion, which follows on from when I was saying about there being some nice character development in this episode, and some nice, like, about the relationships between the lower decks. We get one point where Mariner in this snaps at Tendi, because Tendi is being really optimistic, her usual self. She likes to think of the best of everything. She gets really excited about everything, all of their missions, even the really dull ones. She gets really excited about. And Mariner just snaps and says, why do you always have to make everything out like it's the best thing ever? It's not. This is a rubbish job. Why do you always do this? It's really annoying, basically. And then that sends Tendi off on a route down where she is obviously feeling a bit resentment about being treated like that, but then she picks up this artifact which seems to channel her rage. This cube channels her rage into her, and it was great seeing her really let rip and her anger come out as first of all we just think she's giving it back to Mariner for a change, that she's snapped, and there's this real tension between their friendship, which is nice. But then she starts to morph and turn into this huge scorpion-like creature, this rage-fueled scorpion-like creature. And yeah, it's like, what's going to happen next? And then it sort of ties back into Boimler's plot. So what's happening with Boimler? He has been sort of motioned over by a group of people in the command track type uniforms, the red uniforms, and they tell him that they are a group and they call themselves the Red Shirts. I like the little sort of moment where Boimler pauses and goes, you sure you want to call yourselves that? Nice little meta reference, obviously, because from the original TOS, the original series, the Red Shirts were often the ones on away missions that died, and hence red shirts is a term for people that were expendable, just get killed off. But here, they are the people that want to. They've co-opted this name as they're going to help each other out to get to command, to get to the captain's chair eventually. And because of his experience on the Titan, they asked Boimler to join him. They want the stories of Riker. They want to hear firsthand from someone who's experienced it what Riker's like, what his quirks are, because their whole thing is observing and copying and, generally trying to mold themselves into command material by observing other people, picking up the traits. And so they want to help Boimler here, and so they give him basically a makeover. They show him how to get a better fitting suit to, show off his muscles a bit. They redo his hair. I must say, like the hairdo, looks quite good. They give him some tips on making speeches, because inspiring speeches are, according to this group, what leading is all about, according to this group. That's very important as well. And yeah, they generally try and mold him into someone that is more confident and can really inspire and be a potential leader. And that is what their whole purpose is as a group. It was good seeing Boimler be more confident and more sort of assertive. And actually, because when he first starts, when he's trying to make the speech, he's very hesitant. He's lots of ums and ahs and hi, I guess I'm your captain type thing. And by the end of it, he makes a speech, and he's, it's a real powerful speech. And we're led sort of, I think, at this point to believe that this is generally a positive thing. There is an air of arrogance to these people, even at the beginning, that obviously I think we're meant to go, well, that's a little worried. Something's going to happen here. And I was in two minds whether or not it was going to go down that route, or if they were going to surprise us and maybe do okay, Boimler decides it's not for him, but they were generally trying to help him type thing. And I think actually they were trying to generally help him, but there are some things about their attitude which you only get hints of initially, but come out more later, that are really is the strong message of this episode about not trying to not be yourself, not trying to fit in where where I was going to say where you don't belong, well that's not quite right, where you don't want to fit in, where you would have to be someone that's not you in order to, you shouldn't have to change yourself to fit in. And that comes to a head when Boimler discovers what's happened to Tendi, and what the red shirts do initially is one of them steps forward. Tendi is causing havoc in the mess hall. One of these red shirts steps forward and starts making a speech, and initially all of the other crew in the mess hall look like they are paying attention and this is actually going to inspire them. But then another one of them steps forward and starts speaking over the other one and also making a speech. Then the third one starts making a speech as well, and the inspiration dies because obviously they're all talking over each other, no one can hear, and it's Boimler that has to go, hey, what are you doing? We're not taking action here, you're just making speeches, we need to do something. And they're like, no, we're inspiring the crew. And Boimler points out, we are the crew, we just need to do something. And he leaps over and goes to his friends and said, what's going on? And works out what this creature is, and he knows from his vast knowledge that what he should do. And so he starts replicating things. He's got a bowl of beans, which he accidentally tips over his head. And at this point, I was like, oh, did he generally? I wasn't entirely sure what he was doing. Then he got a birthday cake and he splattered it on his face. Then he tripped over, and I kind of got the thing, because earlier on in the episode they had set up that he was a bit clumsy. He tripped over right at the beginning of the episode, and it had made Tendi and the others laugh. And that is what he's trying to do here. He's trying to make Tendi laugh, because whatever has happened to her, he knows from studying or whatever, that it can be reversed by making her laugh. Clearly it's something to do with, she was angry, and that's what, combined with the cube, what turned her into the creature. So getting her to be happy will reverse the process. So he goes about making an absolute fool of himself constantly, but very deliberately, tripping over, falling over, splattering things in his face in order to get Tendi to laugh, and that transforms her back to normal. But the kind of head guy from the red shirts, he's not happy about this. As far as he's concerned, leaders don't do this. Leaders don't make fools out of themselves to make someone laugh. They give speeches and inspire people. And it's at this point that Boimler realises this group are not for him. And, you know, his friend was in trouble and he needed to do something. He needed to act. And I really love that Boimler, by the end of this, still maintains that confidence that he seemed to get at the end by all of the tutoring they gave him, where he wasn't very confident speaking out. Here, he's speaking from his heart, he's talking about his friend, and he really means it, and, you know, he doesn't hesitate. He gives a damning critique against the group and what they're for, and the fact that they shouldn't be, you know, just moulding themselves after existing captains. They should be their own captain and do their own thing, and if they'll get to command that way by being their own type of captain, not modelling after someone else, which is great. And he convinces most of the other group as well, because they all kind of go, yeah, I'm gonna take a break from the red shirts and so on. And one of them even seems to ask him out on a date, asks him for a drink later. So hey, he's got his confidence, he's got a date. I think nice evolution for Boimler here. And a really strong message. You know, these people were kind of like, I missed out something. Earlier on, actually, it's very important and I can't believe I missed it out. But they had tried to convince him to abandon his friends because they're not the kind of people that command should be seen with. They're, you know, reckless and, you know, stuff. And Boimler points out that they're the ones that are doing work. All we've been doing all day is just doing our own thing, trying to get to command. We're not actually doing anything for the ship. We're not actually doing any work. And so even at that point, that's the first real point that we go, oh, maybe these guys aren't absolute, you know, there's no good in this group at all, really. So now, the one thing I will say is that was kind of predictable from the start. As soon as we got him being ushered over to that group, I kind of thought, oh, this is going to go down a route of he has to choose between his friends or them. And that is probably the only negative I've got, is that it's maybe a little bit predictable. But I think it played out really well, and strong message about being who you are, doing things your own way. Don't abandon your friends to look good. And yeah, really strong storyline. I really enjoyed this one. It's a good episode. The Pakleds stuff wrapped up by basically the spy is beamed back down, and they trick him into revealing their plan, the Pakleds' plans, which was something about a bomb on Earth, and you know, that's fine. It's nice little bit of comedy there to end it on as well. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. I will be back for another review next week. I will see you then. Goodbye.